So anyway, if you want to distribute that, I think that's probably. So we bought right at 169,000 tons for the program. This information ties in what Kathy presented. My information's mid-January. It was 2,225,000 tons under loan, and at that time we had redeemed 188,000 tons under the loan. So if anything, our current amount under loan has gone up, because I don't think we've had that many redemptions in the last few days. That kind of gives you an overview of what it looks like for loans and forfeit in the past few years, and I think that's consistent with what Kathy presented. Our disposition policy, when commodities come into CCC inventory, our policy is to dispose of commodities either through direct sales or barter exchange. In the past, we have used the seam to sell peanuts. This last go around, FSA actually advertised their own catalog for sales, of which I'm sure this group has access to. And then this is their current peanut exchange invitation. One of the challenges is to get rid of surplus commodities or surplus inventory. One of the initiatives is to see if we can create food distribution, export or foreign food aid distribution opportunities for the excess commodities or excess inventory. Currently we have one invitation out to exchange up to 1,200 tons of snack-sized, commercially packaged, dry roasted, unsalted peanuts for use in foreign aid program, and that destination is Haiti, and that's a website if anyone is interested in participating. And I think the delivery date on that is July. Here's some current information on U.S. Warehouse Act licensed nut or peanut facilities by state. As you can see, Georgia leads the league in the number of actual locations as well as the capacity. Texas is number 2, Alabama is number 3. We currently have warehouse locations in 11 states. And this is just some further information. As you can see, in the last 2 years, we've had a significant increase in the number of warehouses under license and also the amount of tons under license. And of course, that's going to reflect production. The one area I wanted to talk a little bit about is the Texoma Peanut Company, and I think most people are aware of Texoma Peanut Company. They were headquartered out of Madill, Oklahoma. They had a related company called the Clint Williams Company. They had numerous locations. They operated in several states, but they filed bankruptcy in November 2014. And of course, when a company files for bankruptcy, it's due to financial stress. And when you file for bankruptcy, you go through the U.S. court system. A trustee is appointed, and you go through the process of either reorganization or liquidation. And in the case of Texoma, the process led them towards liquidation. In December of 14, there was an asset sale where they sold any asset that was marketable. And through that asset sale, a couple things came to light. One was that there was no market or no buyers interested in picking up the equity contracts on those peanuts, which meant that essentially any equity contract they had with a grower ceased to exist, it was voided. They were canceled. And that was a tremendous, I guess, issue that the industry had to work with. The other part of it is the peanuts in storage are not an asset of the company, or they were not an asset of Texoma Peanut Company. So we had 82,000 plus peanuts. I think it was closer to 84,000 tons of peanuts stored in warehouses that the warehouse operator was no longer in control of, and we had new owners of the property. And so that became a tremendous challenge. Some of the issues, and these are the major issues that we had to resolve. We had 16 warehouse locations across 4 states. We had multiple facility buyers, which means when the assets went on the auction block, there just wasn't one company that bought them. There were several. Some of them are mainline peanut companies. Some were local grain companies that just wanted the facilities. We had one, I think it was purchased by a fertilizer company. So each one had a different demand. There were also leased warehouse facilities involved. So some of the peanuts were actually stored in warehouses leased by Texoma, which of course they didn't pay the lease on, and the owners, the operators of those facilities were concerned about the process as well. The other was there was no agreement to assume the storage obligations, meaning that we had peanuts under a warehouse receipt in a warehouse that, again, the new owners, even if it was their intent to get a license on the facility, had no interest in assuming those warehouse receipts or those storage obligations. And then we had multiple owners of the peanuts. I think we had in upwards of 400 farmers involved with the process, as well as Commodity Credit Corporation and some other interests. It became quite a challenge. So what did we do? We had to come up with a process to work through it. The first one is we had to work through the framework of the United States Warehouse Act, and I do believe if we didn't have the U.S. Warehouse Act, which put us all under one common umbrella, that it would have been a mess. You would have had to go to state law, you would have had to go to the Uniform Commercial Code, you would have had to go to whatever Commodity Credit Corporation and the bankruptcy trustee would have allowed. So by having that United States Warehouse Act, it allowed us to get under one umbrella. At the same time, you have to adhere to U.S. bankruptcy laws, and there is a trustee and a bankruptcy judge to get very interested in what our processes are. We also had to protect the quantity and quality of stored peanuts and depositor ownership interests, and anyone in this room knows that if you walk away from a warehouse full of peanuts, the quality becomes compromised in a hurry on a lot of different fronts. So that was something that we had to figure out. Another one is we had to provide marketing opportunities for producers. There was, in some cases, still an equity, marketing equity out there for some of the peanuts. And so there was a lot of interest within the peanut industry to allow the producer an opportunity to sell those peanuts at a premium or receive an equity. We also had to acknowledge the property rights of the new owners, and it was a challenge just to get the property closed and the new owner take control, simply because we had a warehouse full of peanuts where we didn't know the status and if they would have full access to it. And then we also had to limit the financial exposure of both the USDA and the Commodity Credit Corporation, which our programs are supposed to be budget neutral. And so if we go out and try to spend money that we're not budgeted, then that becomes a big issue as well. So what did we do? We had to come up with a special storage agreement with the warehouse operators, and we we had several of those and tried to get the peanut industry on the same call with their attorneys and other interested party. That's quite a challenge to come to an agreement. But I think after about 10 phone calls, we got it done. We had to give producer incentive to redeem CCC loans, and that's where Kathy and her group came in. They did get a program put in place to allow for that so they could redeem at a reduced rate. We had to come up with the option to forfeit loans within a reduced time frame, because if we're going to liquidate, you can't have outstanding loans. So we had to have a point where you either, we call it a loan call, or anything left in loan had to be called. Then we had to come up with a process of a public sale through the United States Warehouse Act process. That's where we went out into the marketplace, sold the peanuts to the whatever the highest bidder was. Then we had to have the warehouse loaded out, and I think the goal was to get it loaded out by, I believe, July. I think in most cases we met that. I think there are a couple cases where it went further than July. We had to then collect the revenues in Kansas City and go through that process. And then we have to distribute the proceeds to the depositors. And we had to come up with a what we call a holdback, which meant we could distribute some funds up front, hold back, and then make a final distribution. I could say just within the last week we finally got the last payment, and that was from the bonding company. And that we're right now waiting for one question to be answered. And if that's answered, then we're going to go ahead and make liquidate or final payment. So I think the month of February, maybe Texoma will be finally behind us. Lessons learned, that's hard to say because these things come up so infrequently. And each one is different, that I don't know if we can really say there's much of a lesson learned other than I hope we never have to deal with it again. So with that, I guess if there's any questions, we'll entertain them. If not, I think Tyrone's ready for a break, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.